very much, everyone, for coming. This mic is working. It's working. You can hear me. Okay, good. Thank you very much, Trisha, for the kind introduction. Thank you very much, everyone, for attending. Thank you very much to the panelists for joining us and members of the media as well. The topic is, I must say, when we started planning this event, we thought who will come to a session like this. As soon as we advertised the event, we was really surprised by the number of people who actually registered, to the extent that we had to increase the number of seats that we have in here, and we had to close down the registration form very much sooner than we originally anticipated. Is this thing actually working or not? Okay. Okay. So I'm not going to take too much time here. Trisha has introduced the speakers. I suppose the reason why we asked the question, is Malaysia ready for a liberal political party, is because we are so used to the idea that politics in Malaysia is governed by ethnicity and religion. So, I suppose the underlying question behind the topic is Malaysia ready for an ideology-based politics? Will ideology-based politics be able to compete with the entrenched ethnic politics that we have in the country? And of course, in order to attract you guys to come, we had to give a little bit more controversial topic. So, the trick worked. So, let's see what the conversation is like. As Trisha said, we have a panel of experts here who will delve on the issue. We have Dr Juli Minoves, who is the president of Liberal International, basically the association for all the political parties around the world. You were telling me just now that you have 115 members. And many of them are actually in government, either as a ruling party or a coalition partner. So there are liberal parties out there. It's not a new thing. And of course, we have two very well-known local political players. Dr. Zol, who might want to announce the formation of Liberal Party today, no? Not yet, no, okay. No. I just want him to be sacked quicker from past. So and of course, Pak Khalid, the Saiful of the liberals in Malaysia. So all the problems caused by the liberals, it started from him. So let's start by inviting Dr. Juli Minoves to say a few words. So the format is very straightforward: 10 minutes each. Then we go to Q&A.
Thank you very much, and I hope that you will keep control on time and let me know if I go overboard. But I'll try to actually be relatively brief with my opening remarks. I'm very glad to be here, first of all, I have to say, and to see the audience, which is on average quite young. That means that there's a vibrancy of youth in this country that is interested on politics, and that's a very good thing. It already shows actually that this is quite a liberal country in its in the way it succeeds in motivating young people to actually have an interest in politics and in their future, because this is what it is all about, right? I mean, people participating from their own experience, from their own differences, but together, in the respect of the differences in ideology, in outlook, in religion and whatnot, participating in a democracy in their future. Now, I have to say that I was a bit surprised. It's my first time in Malaysia, and I was a bit surprised that the word liberal was so controversial, because for me, of course, it is not at all. It's actually a word that represents the best values that I cherish since childhood, basically. The values of being able to determine one's own future, the values of electing one's own government, the values of expressing one's own thinking. And that, to me, didn't seem that controversial. So that I'm here, addressing a controversial topic is a surprise. Now, this said, this comes at a very, very good time for me, I have to say, because I'm not only here to lecture you, but to listen to you. And I will tell you what this is important, because I do represent Liberal International. Liberal International, as you moderator said, one very clearly, is a a big organization that represents most of the liberal parties and liberal organizations in the world. We have over 115 members in over 80 nations on this planet. Many of them are political parties. These political parties are either in government or opposition. We are the World Federation of Liberal Parties. In Europe, of course, we are in government in many countries, in the Netherlands, in Belgium, in Luxembourg, in Denmark, in Estonia, etc. We were in government until recently in the UK, where we got not very good results in the election, but that's what happens in democracy. Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose, and then you prepare for the next election. You know, it's alternance and change in government is part of what we stand for anyway as liberals in Germany, and we have here the representatives of the FNF Foundation, also the Friedrich Naumann Foundation, who are very active within the liberal network in Asia, CALD. In Latin America, in Colombia, for example, the government of Colombia and the majority in parliament in Colombia belongs to Liberal International, and we have many other organizations within Latin America. In Canada, the Canadian Liberals, who are now in opposition, for example, the party of Monsieur Trudeau, Mr. Trudeau. Now it's the son of the late Monsieur Trudeau, who was Prime Minister of Canada. The Liberals were a long time in power. Now they're in opposition. They have a good chance of regaining power. In the Philippines, in the neighboring Philippines, etc. So just to give you a few examples. So I don't see that much controversial. We are a major organization of many mainstream political parties around the world. And I've just, you know, you've noticed that I have mentioned a few parties, a few countries. Let me tell you, our liberal political parties are not all the same. And in some countries, we even have two liberal parties. Let me give you an example. In my own continent, in Europe, in the Netherlands, there are two political parties that belong to Liberal International. One is the D66, and the other one is the VVD. One is a bit more leaning to the right, and one is a bit more leaning to the left. But they're both liberal, because we share exactly the same principles, you know. So liberalism itself is relatively diverse. Now, though I have to say that there are some principles that we really, really believe in together. And I will talk about these principles in a moment. Before that, let me just say something that addresses this issue of liberalism being so-called controversial. In reading the nice background notes that Ideas has provided for me, which is a good thing, about politics in your country, in Malaysia, I understand that one of the issues that is being talked about in your country, and you correct me if you think I'm wrong, is that for some it seems that here that liberalism would be against religion. Well, let me just disabuse you right from the start. You know, I myself, belong to my own religion in my country. I'm a Roman Catholic. You know, I go to Mass from time to time, and I wouldn't say I'm devout every day, but I'm a man of faith, like you are people of faith, some of you, and some are not, and whatnot, and that's fine. I mean, even the president of Liberal International belongs to a faith, and we have members in Liberal International that are of different faiths. For example, in the bureau we have Cecilia Wikström, who's a member of the European Parliament. She's in the bureau that directs some of the issues of LI. She's a Protestant pastor from Sweden, Protestant priest from Sweden. I have met with many Muslim members of Liberal International. I mean, recently I was in Morocco for the meeting of the African Liberal Network, and there I met a lot of Muslim liberals from the Middle East and from North Africa. And I don't see any incompatibility between one's religious faith and one's actually sharing the principles of liberalism, unless you equate being or belonging to a religion into living in a country that is not democratic. Then, of course, there's a difference. But I don't see that as controversial. I mean, maybe some of you don't believe in democracy, but if you don't, it's up to you, of course. But I would think that most of the young audience here would actually share the principles of democracy, and at the same time, maybe or maybe not, might be or might not be religious. So this alleged incompatibility between liberalism and religion, I don't know where it comes from, but definitely not from most of the liberals in the world. You know, there's absolutely no problem in sharing or having some religious faith and actually, you know, believing in human rights for everybody, respect for everybody, live and let live, and like allowing, especially in a country, I think, like Malaysia, that it's so diverse. Goodness, if some members of the community had to impose their beliefs or their ideas or whatever on others, you know, this country would be unlivable, right? I mean, you thrive on diversity. You thrive on like living together, right? On community, living together, allowing each other some space for their own faith and their own religion and their own ideas and whatnot. So this said, because I wanted to actually make this, you know, in the most possible way clear from the start, and I can talk about this a bit longer because I'm interested. It's a dialogue sometimes that we don't have enough, you know, the relationship between liberalism and religion. And it goes back to the origins of liberalism and how it was perceived by faiths and how we have actually, you know, progressed in the past 200, 300 years since the liberal ideas have actually been entrenched. Liberal International abides by a foundational document, which is the Oxford Manifesto. In 1947, and when I say 1947, you can go back to that time and see what was happening then, after the horrors of World War II, in which so many were dead, you know, and you know, in which the oppressive ideologies of fascism, you know, and Nazism had been defeated, you know, and we were just at the beginning of, you know, the Cold War, the first confrontation really between communism in the east of Europe, at least, in Russia and all the satellites of the Soviet Union at the time, and this confrontation, ideological confrontation in the world between the West and the East, between, you know, communism and you know, the free world, as it was used to be called. So we are really 1947 at a moment of historical change, and a lot of people against the horrors of World War II, against fascism, against Nazism, and seeing what's coming up, which is this assertion of communism in Eastern Europe, gather at Oxford University in the United Kingdom, and they issue what they call the Liberal Manifesto of 1947, that is actually the foundation document for Liberal International. And then they elect the first president of Liberal International, one of my predecessors, who was a Spaniard, actually coming from the same region I come from in the world, Salvador de Madariaga. He was an intellectual, he was a professor, and he was also a writer of quite a good renown. Since then, there have been quite a number of presidents. I am number 13 in Liberal International, if I'm not mistaken. Now, what is this Oxford Manifesto? What does it say? And let's just try to go over its principles at the beginning, and I think I'm still within my time. Okay, 3 to 4 minutes. I have enough to actually read some of these principles and let me know if this is so controversial. This is what we abide for. This is what being liberal means, and this helps to answer this question whether Malaysia is ready for a liberal political party. Because tell me if these principles of liberalism, of international liberalism, do really make it so controversial to found or to have liberal parties in Malaysia. By the way, we already have 2 observer members in this country. So, 1, man is first and foremost a being endowed with the power of independent thought and action, and with the ability to distinguish right from wrong. So, you know, freedom of conscience for people to actually distinguish right from wrong. What basically help us distinguish right from wrong, our education, our parents, our faith, all that is not mentioned here, but that's what helps us distinguish right from wrong. And some of us will have different ways of distinguishing right from wrong, but we are, in this way, independent. Respect for the human person and for the family is the true basis for society. I don't see that very controversial, to tell you the truth. The state is only the instrument of the community. It should assume no power which conflicts with the fundamental rights of the citizens and with the conditions essential for a responsible and creative life. Namely, so we do believe in a state that serves citizens rather than just, overimposed and basically directing every aspect of society. Frankly, not much of a controversy there. Personal freedom guaranteed by the independence of the administration of law and justice. The rule of law. Goodness, that might be some controversial for some people, but only for autocrats, not particularly for democrats. Freedom of worship and liberty of conscience. Freedom of worship. That's among our first principles. That means, believe what you want to believe, what you have to believe, right? Freedom of speech and of the press. Again, that is not that controversial, except if you're a government that wants to actually control the press. Freedom to associate or not to associate. Well, I would say that that's a good thing. I like to associate with my colleagues here on the table, but I might not want to associate to some other person. I mean, that's my freedom as a human being, right? Free choice of occupation. Yeah, we don't like slaves, right? Slave labor, not for us. Free choice of occupation. The opportunity of a full and varied education. How controversial. We actually are for education. We want people, and I see a lot of young people here. I'm sure, education is a lot in your minds because that's what allows people, equality of opportunity, which is also important for us. According to ability and irrespective of birth or means. Equality of opportunity. The right to private ownership of property, and the right to embark on individual enterprise. I mean, I look at the growth rates of this country in the past 3 or 4 decades, and goodness, I think you actually engage into that, quite strongly in this country. I don't see this as a communist country, is it? So, frankly, this don't seem to me that controversial, etc., etc. I encourage you to actually read the Oxford Manifesto and let me know whether actually it's that controversial. It's not. So I do think that Malaysia is ready for a political, party that is liberal. It's just that there's been a bit of a strange game of words against the word liberal. But liberal is actually a good word. It means freedom. Who is against freedom here? Why would I be against freedom? I don't know. Well, let me know. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Can I now invite Pak Khalid?
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Saudara Wan Saiful Wan Jan, CEO of Ideas, Dr Dzulkefy, an Islamist public intellectual. Dr Juli Minoves, President of the Liberal International and Friends. Very good morning and Ramadan Kareem. First, let me thank Ideas for inviting me to join this panel discussion on Is Malaysia Ready for a Liberal Party? It is a sign of growing intellectual and cultural maturity, confidence and dynamism that now exists a demand for a lively debate on liberalism, for or against, in Malaysia. When liberalism is seriously contested or even vilified or misrepresented, I think we have arrived at a stage where we need a conscious and serious discussion on what constitutes liberalism. To my mind, the majority of reasonable Malaysians are more than 50% liberal. I think you all have reached 70% liberal, albeit unconsciously. In many ways, we are all liberal now. Just to reformulate what Richard Nixon have said, we are all now Keynesian. Yeah. Even those bearded and turban people who denounce liberalism from their pulpit and in their ceramah are no less liberal than a professed secularist. One Saiful, despite being a life member of PAS, is a liberal, or rather a libertarian. And Dr. Dzulkefy Ahmad, despite his Islamist credential, even now his less beloved leader, Hadi Awang, is to a substantive extent a liberal. As long as we don't include the support for LGBT or same-sex marriage as a requirement to be a liberal. Several months ago, I was engaged in a debate with the president of ISMA, a new grouping with great animosity towards liberalism. But I asked him several litmus test questions. Are you for or against slavery? He answered, of course I'm against slavery. I asked that question because one of the very first achievement of liberal movement was the abolishment of slavery, a social institution that denied the most fundamental aspect of human freedom and dignity which plagued all civilization until modern time. The first British resident was murdered for trying to abolish slavery. That slavery as well as slavery out of the kidnapping of orang asli to be sold as slave. So if there were martyrs of liberal causes in this country, J.W.W. Birch must be the first one. Then I asked him, which one do you choose? Absolute monarchy or constitutional monarchy? Yeah, he chose constitutional monarchy, a historic achievement of the glorious revolution, which was a watershed in the liberal struggle. I believe he, the president of ISMA, would share the content of the Oxford Manifesto 1947, yeah, the founding document of Liberal International, which you mentioned just now. However, to my mind, the revision of the manifesto 50 years later did not take into account the depth of commitment of Asian society, even those with liberal persuasion, towards religion, the sanctity of traditional family as a fundamental vehicle for the transmission of values and the continuation of Asian civilization. In 100 years, the size of Asian middle class will be bigger than the total population of the modern liberal West. And I don't have to belabor the fact that the age of modern liberal West, glorious as it was, is just a blip compared to the oldest world civilization in Asia. I believe Asian societies, Malaysia included, will progressively embrace core liberal principles: human freedom and dignity, human responsibility, political and economic freedom, rule of law, free and fair election, and representative government. Be that as it may, Asian society will continue, even with greater vigor, to draw intellectual and moral sustenance from their tradition and sacred books, the Quran, the Confucian and Taoist texts, the Dhammapada, the Mahayana Sutra, the Vedas. The trajectory of liberalism in Asia in decades to come will not be simply the adoptions of the ideas of John Locke, Adam Smith, Immanuel Kant, John Stuart Mill, Alexis de Tocqueville, Keynes, Hayek, and Rawls. Their ideas will be contested. There will be synthesis with cherished Asian worldviews and values. The practices of liberal politics and policies in the economic and social sphere, their successes and failures will be examined and interrogated. Finally, Asian liberals will have to decide what is useful and productive for their society. Contrary to the assertion of Francis Fukuyama, after the end of the Cold War, history has not ended. The evolution of ideology, social and political philosophy will continue. Otto von Bismarck, whose 200 years anniversary of his birth, the German was celebrating last year, was quoted to have said in an interview, "Politics is the art of the possible." Liberals who want to form a political party, I don't know who is here, I have one Saiful. Liberals who want to form a political party will have to learn to swallow the bitter pill from the Iron Chancellor. One cherishes conviction, but one must walk many miles to meet up with the hopes, aspirations, and the priorities of the people. Ideals will be confronted by stark realities. Compromises will have to be made. One can find many instances where people were not very kind to dogmatic political parties and politicians. As for myself, I consider my party is liberal enough.
Well,
Yeah, you have one.
We have one member.
Yeah. He started as a liberal, but now he's a libertarian. So we do have libertarian in my party. Yeah. Certainly it is not libertarian. It is as liberal as a political party could be within a Malaysian context. My party espouses political and economic freedoms, competition, and attack monopolies, uphold human rights and rule of law. We express the need for social justice and the need to reduce income equality. You know, there are a lot of leftists in my party. So this is very important. This position, I believe, is shared by our partners, the Democratic Action Party and the Islamic Party. Unfortunately, much maligned today. I wish my party could be more liberal, but I wouldn't want to suffer the fate of Dr. Zul and his group. I believe what is urgently needed is a greater cohesiveness of Malaysian liberals to articulate and clarify liberal philosophy, to forge synthesis with Asian worldviews and values, to offer the public liberal position with regard to economic and social policy. There is a dire need to articulate liberal position with regard to security and stability, domestic as well as regional. Liberals must be deeply concerned with the rapid militarization of the conflict in the South China Sea and the race of military build-up between China and the United States in the Asia-Pacific. As liberals, we are disgusted with the propensity of the leaders of the ruling regime to break new records and in scandals and corruptions, while other countries in the region which are in the past behind us in economic, social, and educational achievement are now surpassing us and leaving us further and further behind. Finally, I would be failing my duty as a liberal if I don't mention this. Someone who has done so much to promote the idea of political and economic freedom, to lead the way in rejecting the NEP, forging an unprecedented coalition of liberal forces in Malaysian history, is today languishing in prison on trumped-up charges. The rule of law and the integrity of institution of justice is undoubtedly one of the cardinal principles of liberalism. Anwar Ibrahim is languishing behind bars because of the subversion of the judiciary. One of his favorite quotes is from Edmund Burke, whose writing has inspired F.A. Hayek, the economist and philosopher who more than anyone else has contributed to the revival of liberalism in the last and our century. Now let me quote Edmund Burke so that we will not forget Anwar Ibrahim. All that is necessary for evil to triumph is that good men do nothing. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that attempt to claim the liberal mental for PKR. So let's see if Dr. Zul can beat that.
No, I'm in no competition at all. Right, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. A very good morning to all. Thank again to Saiful for this invite. And to Dr. Juli, refreshing course there to some, because I read about liberalism many years or perhaps decades back. But things that you have said refreshes my understanding of liberalism. And Pak Khalid, don't provoke me so much. Otherwise, I'll be quoted in the media. They're around here. Right. For once, I felt that. I really feel relief because I'm not the subject of this discourse. All of you are. So I'm free from, you know, the usual critique and derision of Islamism, Islamists, and whatever others that you keep posing and shooting at me. But today I'm really relieved. So I'll take my own stride. It's my turn now, yeah. All right. I'll begin by being very Voltaic. Very Voltaire, very Voltaic, if you understand me. I may not agree with your idea of a liberal party, but I will defend your right to advocate your conviction and your ideology. Liberal, don't clap me. You don't give me applause for that. And that is very cardinal to an Islamist Democrat. I repeat, Islamist Democrat, not Islamist liberal, yeah? And I insist on that because it is in the worldview of Islam, the contestation of ideas is so cardinal in the search for truth and justice. I could quote you many verses of the Quran, but let me just pick on one that really exemplify that one of the main attributes of a believer, more so in Islamists, is when Allah says in the Holy Quran, فَبَشِّرْ عِبَادِيَ الَّذِينَ يَسْتَمِعُونَ الْقَوْلَ وَيَتَّبِعُونَ أَحْسَنَهُ. Glad tidings unto those believers who are willing to listen and engage in discourses in a translation that is a bit more free. But thereafter, filter the ideas of man to be choosing of the best of the discourse of man. I hope you understand that. And that is the very essence of liberalism, if I may, you know, in a more simplistically putting it as that the essence of liberalism is hinges on reason. I think Dr. Juli did not highlight that very much, but going back to the classical philosophers of liberalism, namely John Locke, you know, John Stuart Mill, Jeremy Bentham, and others, Thomas Paine of the recent U.S. founding father. Reason is the essence of liberalism, and the source of the seeking of rule of law, of justice, and whatnot, hinges on that. And that is not against Islam at all. As I've quoted you the verses, the particular verse earlier. Hence, let me just outrightly, put my stand on this. I think what is, or perhaps could I just emphasize the fact that liberalism is not intrinsically against religion. It is agnostic, perhaps, or non-committal to the to the idea of religion, but it is not against it. And philosophers that I've named, they are believers and adherents of faith. However, religion is not within, the body politics of this ideology. It is not. It's not playing and assuming any role whatsoever. It is reduced to a personal kind of, affairs and one's conviction and one's vertical relationship with one's God. That's about it. But it is not per se against religion. Let me get that right, and Dr. Juli could certainly correct me if I'm wrong at that one. I think what they are against is not being liberal perhaps, but being hyper-liberal. And that's where the LGBT and same-sex marriages and whatnot, which are regarded, as a taboo in all religion. And I have no qualms to say that. It's unfortunate, but that is my ideological stand on it. Although that does not mean, that I could not engage and seek ways of how to manage and find, amicable resolution or solution to this. Because in the context of engagement and continuous renewals of ideas and solution, I think that is very much within what I may like to coin, or perhaps the free enterprise of ideas, where that is essentially, I think, all Democrats should believe in. And being an Islamist Democrat, I would really believe that as far as we are concerned, we would like to be seen, be perceived to assume the role of critical political players in advocating our principles, and much as others would have to equally contest and win over the mandate of the people. I think that is being very liberal enough and tolerant enough. So, getting into the substantive debate would, I think, may not be pertinent at this juncture. However, Dr. Juli has early on alluded and admitted the fact that there is no such, one-size liberal that fits all. And you have a milieu of understanding or the ideological the persuasions of liberalism and libertarian, and that's make it a lot more difficult. What is liberalism in the sense that, I think the debate can go on and on until the cows come home, but unfortunately the cow will not come home. It will be unending. Yeah, but classical liberalism philosophers, puts those cardinal principles and parameters as alluded by all, and I've added on the principle of, or rather on reason, and I have said it earlier that is not necessarily against Islam or against religion per se. Right. In the light of this discourse in this morning, I for one, I personally believe that moving away from ethnic-based, race-based politics, and even worse, all the other, all the other concept of politics of patronage and others, in this country, surely, going this way towards an ideological party, I think is positive. Putting aside the hyper-liberal tendencies, that I would not condone for one moment at all, because that is going against my principle. You may think that you have the right to do it, be it, but if you ask me, I would never would condone. But the fact that you are already in existence, we've got to engage and communicate. We cannot ostracize you. We can drive you into the sea, or kill them all. That would not be. That would be very illiberal. Really tongue twister, that one. So I think I would take it for the first round to introduce, by way of introduction, the things that I've said, and I would make it very clear that an Islamist party would not view a liberal party as necessarily, an opposition or inimical, or from the point of view of enmity and, or or necessarily having to oppose them. But on the contrary, I think we must encourage engagement on the political plane into one that would really contest ideas. I, for one, have already said it again and again that yes, we have no qualm to say that Islam is our raison d'être. However, we would put all that we represent by way of, principles that are heavenly revealed, that are divine book, whatever. But when we come to contestation in the sense of a political contestation, we are subjecting it to the contest of ideas. And getting mandate or not would really depend on how we articulate our policy, based on it being superior and more efficacious in the sense of its problem-solving solutions. And I think everyone else should be given a chance to do the same. So again, I started by Voltaire. I will repeat that, I am in no way opposed to the idea of a liberal party in Malaysia. Perhaps they can also be in our coalition Pakatan Rakyat 2.0 perhaps. And we look forward for that. But what we are at pain and in a way finding it a bit more, if I use the word difficult, it is the hyper-liberal tendencies, and who am I to say what is hyper and what is hypo? So so in that sense, I think the contest would have to be faced as adult, as wise, discerning citizen of this country, and I'm not quite sure that would add up to my credential of being Islamist liberal. But this word has been really abused. I dare say, even the Prime Minister is now saying that accusing and that liberalism is a threat to Islam. If I'm not mistaken, it is in the Wawasan Vision 2020. You have a liberal society, right? So Rukun Negara. So honestly, you got to be truly consistent in this. Oh, are we playing to the gallery? Are we playing to a very partisan constituencies? What are we trying to achieve? Yeah. So by all these contradictions, and it's very, very extremely regrettable, if not outrightly deplorable and despicable. I thank you.
Thank you very much. So not quite admitting that he's a liberal yet, but kadang-kadang hidayah tu agak perlahan. So
55% liberal.
Okay, anyway, let's go into Q&A. I'm going to kick off with some questions here, and then I will take it from the audience as well. I will be coming back to your point about hyper-liberalism. That is, I've never heard that term before, but we can do that. But I'm interested in what you say just now, Dr. Minoves, about how in the Liberal International, in one country, there are two liberal parties. One leans to the right, one leans to the left. Now, can you explain the difference between a right-leaning Liberal Party and left-leaning Liberal Party?
Yes, thank you very much. I think mostly the difference would be not on the way that liberals conceive of freedom, which is relatively expansive, but in the way they see, in a way, and I'm generalizing here a little bit, the role of the state, basically, whether they can intervene a bit more or not, within a certain limit, because you saw in the Oxford Manifesto that we all believe that there's a relatively limited role of the state. We don't want an all-encompassing state that determines what reason is for everybody. And also in the way, you know, certain social issues, social services, it's more or less on the economic side of liberalism. There are two sides, I would say, of liberalism: the political side of human rights and freedoms and whatnot, and then the other side, the economic side, in which, you know, we guarantee free property, as you said, and free property rights, and also free exercise in the economy, whatever. You know, some liberals might be a bit more willing to intervene in the economy in terms of, like, you know, trying to redistribute a little bit more in terms of the state, and some others a bit less. So I would say that that's where we stand. But of course, even in the economic area, all liberals, those left-leaning or right-leaning, as we said, would be, I think, all for, like, you know, a free economy, right, and free trade and whatnot. So even within the economic sphere, there are some core basic tenets of liberalism. Let me say in this, because this is actually important, and I heard, you know, Khalid before referred to, like, you know, the Oxford Manifesto, said the Oxford Manifesto was good. What happened afterwards, how you revised it in 50 years later, maybe not as, you know, not exactly what I like, but we are in the midst of, right now, of rethinking the liberal principles, not rethinking the principles, because the principles are the principles, but of expanding them. We are in 2015, and the world has changed a lot since 1947. There are many issues that we didn't have to even think about in 1947. You know, issues of bioethics, issues of the environment, issues that are now present in a major way in our lives. So I have started, since my election as president of Liberal International last year in Rotterdam, a consultation for a thinking of the new liberal principles. The consultation started at Oxford University this year. I organized a big meeting like the one of 1947 of liberals from around the world, thinkers and politicians and non-politicians and whatnot. So we assembled a lot of people. We slept in the dorms at Oxford University. We colonized the college for a few days, and we came up with some ideas, very diverse, very varied, etc. I brought these ideas to our Zurich meeting recently, in which we had a panel that debated them. Among them, there was Dr. Wan from the PKR who was there, who came, and she participated in that discussion also. Then I'm organizing in September at the United Nations General Assembly a leaders meeting, liberal leaders meeting, so all the prime ministers and presidents and foreign ministers from liberal parties that will be at the General Assembly of the United Nations. We will gather to actually think about the results of the Oxford process, we call it. And after that, we'll take that to the Congress in Mexico City in October, late October, where we will actually give a mandate to a drafting committee to work for about a year and a half until the next Congress. That would probably be in Andorra in 2017, to actually think about how do we confront in 2015 and 2017 then some of these new things that are happening to the world. Because unfortunately, or fortunately I would say, you know, the world is not static. Things change, things progress. Our own understanding of human beings, you know, changes through time. Things and human beings and that were one way 50, 60 years ago, our generation, or your generation, you know, which is, you know, much younger than I am now, and I always felt like I was the young politician from Andorra or whatever. Not anymore. I'm in my 40s, and, you know, I just already see this young generation coming up. The world is not the same for you that it was for me 25 years ago when I started at the UN, and definitely not like for many other people, you know. Generations change, issues change, and sometimes we get more information because our reason, the way we reason, also changes. It doesn't mean that it's better or it's worse. some things that seem to be unbreachable, some spheres of liberty for a lot of people, seem much more possible with each generation. I am a big believer in that. I don't know whether that's liberal or not, in actually progress. I think progress can exist. I think we can go back too, so we have to be careful about that. But there's progress. If we look at the number of democracies 50 years ago, or 100 years ago, and we look at the democracies now, there's progress, definitely. Human history, most of human beings in human history have lived under oppressive regimes or under regimes that were not democratic. Enlightened or not enlightened, whatever. But democracy is a new thing that we cannot take for granted. That's why it's so important that liberals believe in it and promote it, because it's not the natural state of human beings. It's something that has come through reason, through negotiation, through wars, through blood. And we have it now, and I think we're much better for it. And a lot more people in democratic societies can actually find spheres of freedom. And what I said at the beginning, which for me summarizes liberalism: live and let live. Live your life the best you can. Don't do harm to others. And let people live. Don't judge too much. Let people live in their own spheres, with their faiths, with their understandings of life, without imposing.
Good. I think you brought up a very interesting point about the difference between the so-called the so-called left liberal and the so-called right liberals. And maybe I can ask Pak Khalid on this in the context of Malaysia. And you highlighted the fact that it's mainly on the economic side. And this is why this is the thing I want to ask Pak Khalid on how would you distinguish between the social liberals and the economic liberals, and how would you explain that in the context of Malaysia today? I think this, to be honest, to put a context to my question, I think this is a major weakness among the liberals in Malaysia. We are still within the liberal school of thought, but we keep fighting each other. When someone say, I'm an economic liberal, I'm a social liberal, and they just don't want to meet up in the middle. So, but how would you explain that, Pak Khalid?
It's easy. Just call yourself as an inclusive liberal. Everything will be settled. Yeah. I did made mistakes. Yeah, in the evolution of my understanding about liberalism. When you grow as a liberal. Yeah, through reading Milton Friedman, Friedrich Hayek. Yeah. The unfortunate thing, Hayek was great, yeah, but Hayek is an economist, yeah. So we say if you are liberal, you are against socialists, yeah, against socialism. The socialists, the leftists, very much passionately believe in freedom, human responsibility, but they have quite a different set of, I would say, economic dispensation. The bigger role, as you said, of the state to redress inequalities, the gap, the need for social justice. Yeah, but the classical liberals, no intervention in the state. Yeah, the market will take care of that. Yeah, the Republicans still believe in that, or the Libertarians still believe in that. Yeah, but I will still consider Keynes as a great liberal, yeah, who want to save liberalism, yeah, from the untenable, yeah, empirically wrong conception of the market. The market can settle all the problem. You leave it. You just withdraw from the market, yeah. But now with emergence of the influence of John Rawls and Nobel laureate economists like Paul Krugman, yeah, it has shifted. It has shifted. You can't exclude these people and simply call them as socialists or leftists. Yeah, there are. Now the hotly debated is the Piketty book, yeah, on inequalities. Yeah, are we liberals going to just be silent about that? Yeah, this is the market. Yeah, we see it in Malaysia, which has become a political issue. Yeah, and one of the important issue raised by Thomas Piketty is that if you don't look into this problem, inequality, the gap of income will become a threat to democracy. I think he has a thesis that we have to take seriously. So, well, I have continuous debate with my party leaders. There are a lot of leftists, but I appreciate they are been for a long time advocates of human rights, freedom, rule of law, economic justice. And they are very passionate. About this. I'll have to engage these people. Whether you can arrive at a just position through the market alone, or mixing the market and the state instrument. So this is an interesting idea. We can't be very dogmatic. Just taking the line of Hayek, but even Hayek was much more, in that sense, comprehensive in his view, in comparison with Milton Friedman. So economic liberalism, is not only about market, it's about social justice, also about redressing inequality. For Malaysian context, most people believe that the government has important role in the economy. This is an expectation for the people. If you say that no, then you're going to lose your seat, or you lose your government. In education, infrastructure, strategic industries. So you have to go through a lot of debates. About these matters. But sometimes you have to simplify things. When you go to election, you have to simplify things. Whatever the people want. As long as within a reasonable framework. It does not impair competition. I think we should be able to live with it. I think a kind of spectrum. Within Malaysia. We should be able to include all within the spectrum as liberal.
Good. So, interesting point about how you can be an ideologue when you're talking theoretically. When you deal with politics, then you have to face the real world, and you have to face public expectation. And you see, this is what happened when you become a politician. No, joking aside. No. But that is an important point to consider, I think. I run a think tank. I can afford to be ideological. But when we deal with politics, it's a whole different story.
You've got vote to count.
Yes, true. You have to win. Otherwise, what's the point of being ideological? Well, there is a point of being ideological. But otherwise, if you don't win votes, what's the point of being a politician? But Dr. Zul, you raised this issue about...
Could I comment on this as well?
Yes, of course. But let me just throw the question, and then you can answer both. I want to touch on this hyper-liberalism thing. But I want to ask a question from a slightly different angle. Now, your example is an interesting one, which is about gay rights. So let me ask that question based on the example that you gave. So many believe, and I suppose Muslims believe that being a gay is not the right thing. But there are people who do not believe in that, and they're not Muslims. If Muslims were to go into power and start imposing their belief on those who do not believe, which is what liberals are generally against, the imposition of values on others using force, using coercion, government powers. Now, if Muslims were to go into power and say that no one can be a gay, no one can be homosexual, is that not un-Islamic? Because there's not supposed to be compulsion, right? Especially on those who do not believe. Is that not turning your belief system, come into power and then be hadiawang? No, sorry. No. Sekali-sekala, you see. Every now and then I just have to say that.
Puasa ni. Okay. Right, let me dwell a bit on this very interesting discussion. Incidentally, I tweeted this yesterday. I'm not quite sure why, but perhaps in the backdrop of this report on WSJ, of embezzlement of damning exposure, if I may use the word, on none other than the number one of the country. Now, I quoted this. I quoted Milton Friedman, incidentally. If you put the federal government in charge of the Sahara Desert, in 5 years, there'll be a shortage of sand. I think that brings the discussion earlier. That brings the discussion earlier to zoom into, I would dare say, the aversion of liberalism on government. And if I also could quote Thomas Paine, with your permission, society in every state, every condition is a blessing. But government in the state, government in the state is a necessary evil. In its best state is a necessary evil. Yeah. And in its worst of state, an intolerable one. Somehow, this is also cardinal to liberalism, perhaps. And that is the essence of power corrupts. I think that's Thomas Paine again. Is it, Dr. Juli? Power corrupts absolute power. No, sorry, that's Lord Acton. Sorry, Lord Acton. Puasa again. Hypo. You tend to get hypoglycemic. All right. So, I think in this discourse, where you're coming from by way of this is an ideological question, perhaps. But I don't really see the rationale of all this, in the sense of the aversion towards government and authority. Because I think, from an Islamist perspective, what is important there is the check and balance, that key cardinal principle of check and balance. And for as long as there is this in place, institutionalized, and as efficient as it could be, there is no aversion for government per se, but government tends to get corrupt and every time. So that's my comment on that. I'm not quite sure where you're bringing this discussion on that, but that is an ideological question, right? Insofar as libertarians are concerned, and of course, coming back to the economic libertarian thing. Pak Khalid says that Keynes is very much a liberal. Yeah, of course. Keynes is.
Dalam hati, inside me, I was saying Astaghfirullahalazim.
Not the classical liberalism, though. Yeah, and that's where I think your idea of rethinking. We have that as well, in the sense of our ideological belief in al-ijtihad. That you really, in matters where there is a constant change and it is evolving, the Sharia provides for a intellectual renewals of it, so as to place us in a position to address these issues that are always changing. So in that sense, in many sense, in fact, I tend to feel that, there are convergence in this, but without, I've got to be very careful with that. Even utilitarianism of Jeremy Bentham has its, I'm very careful to say this, has its similarity with the idea of al-maslahah, the public good. We can discuss that, so in that sense, I find the discourse interesting, and hence the reason why I think there's a need for more engagement in a sense. And beside being hyper liberal, I think most of this reasoning that has come out of this human experience and Western civilization, in the sense of its being an ideology, to a large extent, it's very attractive. And you see all these young minds, being the students of Pak Khalid in his school of what, libertarian, is gaining traction actually, because it speaks to the mind, it speaks to reason, and beyond just blind following and blind faith. And I think in that sense, Islamists has to really present ourselves to be speaking with reason, not so much of being tolerant as such, but with reason. And coming to your question now, Saiful, I see an Islamist engage in political contestation, and if ever they get into power, the test of power corrupts is a real challenge. And the rhetoric of one person, one vote, one time for Islamists seems convincing once upon a time. And unfortunately, the onus is on Islamists, as and when they get into power, to remain Democrat. And to answer your question directly, Saiful, that's not the first time you try to put it in that kind of. This is the usual one. I would dare say that, yes, no qualms, yeah? Yes, we represent high authority, but we are Democrat insofar as subjecting all our policy advocacy to the democratic contest and the legislative process. If we are Democrat, and I always call myself an Islamist Democrat, I'm willing to accept defeat when my advocacy is not convincing enough, not persuasive enough, not compelling enough. However, I will still plow on, because I believe in the superiority of these policies. Firstly, because it's certainly from God Almighty, that understand the frailties of human being. But more importantly, because of that, it provides a superior solution. However, it must be framed. It must be framed and enacted into laws that would provide this greatest happiness to the greatest number of people. That is very much what society do you call that? What is it in the liberal jargon? Egalitarian, equal, and as well, achieving that objective of a just development. So, Saiful, we would certainly not impose Islam on Muslim, let alone on others, because the way Islamists should be, Democrat, is to always engage in a contestation that offers our political offerings and policies and program that would and should be convincing, compelling enough, and that if ever it gets to see the light of the day by being enacted in the State Legislative Assembly or the bicameral, parliament of the Dewan Negara dan Dewan Rakyat through the legislative process, that makes it very democratic. And there will not be any backdoor imposition of Islam. So if we win that way, at the same time taking care of justice, even to the minority groupings and the more sensitive groupings, I think no qualms. We can, stand high, stand tall, to say that we have done in the best manner that we could to dispense and to deliver justice to all. I thank you.
Okay, and just to clarify, when he was making that political promises, that's not on behalf of party, it's a new party that's coming up. So
How dare you?
Okay, let's open up to Q&A. Yeah, please.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullah, and a very good morning to all. I'd like to direct my question to Dr. Dzulkefy. You talk a lot about contestation of ideas. I was wondering, would you be open, for example, if in the future, if not now, if there is an Islamic scholar who would argue that the contestation of ideas should also be open in Islam itself? So, for example, if an Islamic scholar would argue, hey, homosexual is actually allowed in Islam. A rethinking the idea of ijtihad, as you said. Thank you.
Here.
Right. Assalamualaikum. Good morning, everyone. Just want to bring the question back. One, did we invite anyone from UMNO?
Anybody want to confess your sins?
Yeah. No. I mean, for the panel.
No, we didn't.
Okay, because I think it's quite ironic that I think the two things are running about the event, the question and Pak Khalid's claim to being the representative of the Liberal Party. We did, of course, have a Liberal Party at the inception of our nation. It negotiated our way out of colonialism. It protected us from communism and the aggressive nationalism of our neighbor. It promoted free enterprise. It respected the limits of government in social matters, and it understood the meaning of individual liberty. And that party was called UMNO. And its early leaders, Dr. Jaafar and Tunku Abdul Rahman, managed to espouse both nationalism, marry together nationalism and liberalism. Certainly, Tunku was a political, economic, and social liberal. So I wish we had someone from that party or the successor of that party to explain whether that party still exists. But in their absence, I wonder if our friends from PKR and PAS or PASMA will answer that. Thank you.
Good. Another one, please. Yes.
I just want to answer the question. Is Malaysia ready for a liberal political party? I say no, because it's against Islam, it's against the federal constitution. Islam is complete. Islam is nice. Islam is peace and prosperity. Crusade war and Hagia Sophia is the example that Islam is very tolerant to all. Thank you.
Good. Okay. Well, good or not. So let's see. Thank you. Can we let the panel answer first, the first three questions, and then we go to the others. So, you were saying just now about what if a new scholar comes and say that something that was impermissible before is suddenly permissible now. What happened to UMNO? Everybody knows. And liberalism is not compatible with Islam. It's against Islam and the Constitution. Okay. So anybody want to address that?
I would like to add what already being said by Tengku Abidin. In 1969, the Alliance Manifesto, we just discovered recently, a newspaper cutting, mentioned that a liberal manifesto. You see how persuasive was the word during that time, And when after racial riot, Tun Razak came, and forged this document called Rukun Negara. What he envisaged was Malaysia to be a liberal society. And here comes his son, who publicly proclaimed that liberalism is a threat to Islam. You see, if the president of that party have openly renounced that principle, yeah, that has been advocated by his own father. Shall we call the party still liberal? I would still concede, yeah. Nominally, they still believe in constitution, yeah. They believe in human right, yeah. We have human right commission. I'm fair. I'm being fair here, yeah. The institution is there, yeah, and they should be here. I have no qualms debating with them, yeah, whether they still subscribe to the ideas and the philosophies, political and social philosophies of the founding father of the country and the founding father of that political party. We want to see, yeah. But I believe, yeah, I'm an inclusive liberal, yeah. As long as I describe to this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, you are liberal. Yeah, whether you're UMNO, whether you're PAS, whether you're DAP, whether you're PKR, yeah, I believe, yeah. But how many? Yeah, how many leaders of that party still believe in that philosophy? That is the question. Now, Islam and liberalism. Yeah, I'll go. Well, this is almost when I go everywhere. Yeah, in campuses. Yeah, they don't allow me to enter campuses because they check with the student affairs department. Or Khalid cannot. Yeah. Why Khalid? Because he's a liberal, yeah. So I'm barred from universities. So we just have our seminar and workshops, yeah, outside of the gate of the universities, yeah. You're still able to discuss liberalism, yeah. Now, this Islam and liberalism, yeah. Of course, liberalism will not bring you to heaven. Liberalism do not promise you paradise. Yeah, if you are looking to be after you die, you go to nirvana or to paradise, yeah, shurga. Then you have to not be Islamist. Yeah, you go into religion here. Yeah, but you know. You require your religion, yeah, for salvation. Yeah. But the Prophet also said, Antum a'lamu bi umuri dunyakum. Am I right? Yep. Yeah. Yeah. You know better the affairs of the world. Liberalism is about the affairs of the world. You want to have peace, you want to have justice, yeah, yeah. You have to think for yourself. People say, this is human mind. Of course, that is the function of human mind. God gives the mind, the intellect, for you to think, to solve this problem. Otherwise, you have to read tons and tons of the Quran. Quran just gives principle about salvation and basic morality, and likewise in other scriptures, yeah. But we have to live in this world 60 years, 70 years, yeah, and we have to use that one. Liberalism emerge from human experience, human reflection about the state of our earthly condition. Do we want war or do you want peace? Do you want a tyrannical government or do you want an oppressive government? Yeah. Then John Locke come. Yeah. The right for people to oppose a tyrannical government. Yeah. Then come the glorious revolution. Yeah. We should limit the power of the monarchy, share the power between the parliament and the monarchy. And later on, you have election. Later on, you expand people who can vote from landlords only to ordinary people. And then you include women, yeah, participation. Women's votes are also counted. Then women also can become representative. Yeah, this is all evolution. Yeah, people have to think what differentiate man from the animal is man has history, and we learn from history. Animals have no history; they have no language. Yeah, so we inherit, yeah, the philosophy, the reflection, the experiences of people of the past, yeah, to create a better world. Yeah. Liberalism comes of human desire to create a better world. Yeah. Is there anything wrong with that? Yeah. The Prophet said, enjoying that, Antum a'lamu bi umuri dunyakum. You know better about the affairs of your world. Yeah. When you want to create a parliamentary democracy, you don't have to go into detail to find what kind of democracy we need, what kind of parliament that we need. It's not there. It's not the function of scripture to provide us detailed injunction how to conduct our worldly affairs. That is the function of human intellect and human experience. Yeah, I think it's very important for the Muslim to understand it. There is a demarcation, yeah, a demarcation. I will not say total separation, a demarcation or delineation. What is religious, yeah, for you to achieve salvation, and what is worldly affairs, yeah, for us to have, can create a better world, a more just world, a more peaceful world, and so that we can conduct our daily life, yeah, without interruption, yeah, without feeling fear, having the fear of whether the street is safe or not. Yeah, thank you.
Yes. Now we contrast the libertarian from the Islamist. With my honest answer, and I wouldn't want to mince my word on this. Okay, and bersekali, and together with the question from the young man earlier, right? And I have no qualms to say this. Yeah. If you allow me, I'm not proselytizing, okay? Allow me to just expound a bit of what Sharia is. Yeah. This, would I say, the corpus of legal prescription in the Sharia, it has certainly a supreme overriding purpose, and that is finally to deliver justice. Okay. And the Sharia law would, if I could, categorize it, or how it is categorized in its by the fuqaha, the jurists of Islam, are those that are in the categories of what is known as the changeables. Sorry, the unchangeables first. It's known as athawabit, laws that pertains to belief, that pertains to morality. What is moral now, or in the time of, time immemorial, cannot be suddenly immoral now, and vice versa. So those are practically cast in stones. Be whatever time of the Prophet, you see that, stealing, adultery, whatnot, yeah, would run the same throughout the history of man. Okay, these are known as the athawabits, and essentially it hinges on matters of belief in the sense of a tawheed, the unity of Godhood, yeah, or keesaan Allah, yeah, and of course on morality. These are the non-changeables, the unchangeables. It's not contextualized to time and space. It does not experience intellectual renewals of ijtihad. However, another category of laws of Sharia is what is known as the changeables, and this is known as the al-mutaghayyirat, that are in the realms of mu'amalat, those alluded to by Khalid earlier. Yeah. However, we don't have much time. We come from another discourse then. Okay. All right. Let me just quickly try to put it, because it's coming to explain that, there will not be one faqih who would come around 10, 20, 100 years down the road to say that, because if those are in the realm of the unchangeables, it will be almost like cast in stones. However, the good thing is, in matters of politics, of governance and whatnot, these are in the realm of muamalats. In the words of Ghanouchi, and Ghanouchi exactly used this dalil, this evidence, this incident of the Prophet on the cross pollinations. When he came into Medina, he saw the Medinan, doing this cross pollination, and say, "Hey, what are you doing?" "Oh, we have used to be doing this," and and he said, "No, you don't need to do that." And that year, the harvest dropped, and they came around to say, "Oh, Prophet of God, you said," He said, at that point, he said, "Antum a'lamu bi umuri dunyakum." You know better the affairs of your mundane affairs, your worldly lives. So, in this sense, is what is interesting. And in this sense as well, that makes Islamists coming around, offering their social, political, public policies, because it is able to be, it is subjected to contextualization of time and space. Okay, and equally we've got to contest, whether your solution will be superior or not, would have to be dependent on how able are you to articulate your policies. However, the Islamist position is that we will be in constant check by whatever of our policies is coming from the maqasidic, is coming from the maqasid aspect, coming from the spirit, and sometimes even the form and the letters, but more importantly, it is always proposing a position that is in the light of the spirit of the Sharia. Hence, it is a contrast from the liberal. Liberal is essentially on reasoning, of human reasoning. Yes, we have an element of human reasoning. What is human reasoning cannot be, contrary to the universal principles of Islam that you must understand. And that makes us Islamist Democrat different from libertarian. Oh, sorry, liberal. Sorry, he is a libertarian. Okay, so that's my attempt at answering this question, and I hope I made myself clear. I hope no reporting by the media say that now I become liberal or libertarian. So, no, okay. So you have reported earlier, yeah. All right. So that is our position actually. Yeah. I hope I've made myself clear. Thank you.
But I also want to highlight the fact that it's not. It's really interesting, because the points that you're raising can only be raised in a liberal environment. You see, if you don't have a liberal environment,
you are right. You are 100% right, if not more, because authoritarian government. See, this is a challenge on the Islamists. A response to the end of authoritarian regime has resulted in this situation of the Muslim world over, where it is now taken over by sectarian, by sectarian strife and whatnot, because Islamists are not able to face up to the challenge to immediately propose, a democratic Islamist government, whatever, that would really be based on principles of rule of law and others. And it's quite regrettable in that sense. So I have no qualm to say that the challenge is on us. The honor is on us to quickly come and propose this. And that is the contestation that I've been talking about, and political Islam, given the context of a plural society in Malaysia, is more challenging. You essentially you want to share this nation, and there are conflicting, mutually exclusive demands and constraints. How would you finally come to a resolution where you can share this nation within the context and the provision of the federal constitution? That is the challenge. You call yourself liberal, you call yourself Islamist, or what have you. At the end of the day, we have got to come and face this. I have no qualm to say that this is the greatest challenge on all political actors and political players. Okay. And we got to face it, Otherwise, you come to a point of a zero-sum game. You want to exterminate others. You want to ostracize others. Once they differ with you, you have no tolerance for dissent. Thank you.
Of course, these questions that you asked are more for my colleagues here, but it is fascinating. it is fascinating for me to actually listen to them discuss and debate in this society where a large part of the population is Muslim, for example, how to reconcile liberalism and Islam. And of course, I would just want to repeat what I said earlier. You know, liberalism is not against any religion, be it Islam or Christianity, in all its forms, because of course, you know, people who are religious in one particular religion, you know, there are a lot of differences among the way religions are conceived, even within one religion. You know, my references basically for religion and politics is my advisor at Yale University when I was writing my PhD was Juan Linz, who was a great political scientist, and I took a course with him with religion and politics, and you know, frankly, I never learned anything that made me think that religion and liberalism is incompatible. On the contrary. Also, I come from a region of the world in the Iberian Peninsula where there's a long history of Islam rule when actually ideas were flourishing in the Middle Ages. You know, I studied a long time ago a book by a Jewish scholar, Moses Maimonides, The Guide of the Perplexed, who talks a lot about politics. Now, Moses Maimonides was born in Cordoba, the city in southern Spain, when Islam was ruling in Cordoba. And he was able to flourish as a scholar, a Jewish scholar, obviously from very different ideas. So, from this limited knowledge and experience, and I defer to my colleagues here about Islam, I think any religion can allow a lot of discussion and levels of engaging with fellow human beings. Now, fellow human beings are very diverse. In this country, you have a very good example. You know, people from different ethnic groups, from different religions. Even in my country, in the United States, where I've lived for many years, also, you know, obviously, and people can live together. We just need to share certain principles of respect, of engagement. Basically, I mean, we live, what, 70, 80, 90 years on this earth. You know, if we don't respect each other, if we kill each other, you know, I mean, what's left? You know, it's not that human for me. I mean, I think we have to reflect on that. Let me just quickly go back to an issue which is at the core also of what we're discussing today, and that was mentioned by my colleagues here, so I would like to just respond. I have not quoted as many great thinkers as they have. They've been very good at recalling some of the great liberal thinkers of the past, and not so liberal even. But let me just go back to one, which is Adam Smith. Because, you know, we tend to think of economic liberalism as, you know, that invisible hand that Adam Smith talked about, and everything is the market and nothing else. I'm sorry, but Adam Smith has been misread, greatly misread, because Adam Smith not only wrote about the invisible hand, he also wrote about how to guide that invisible hand, you know, towards a certain common good for human beings. You know, he wrote about moral teachings, you know, and whatnot, and about stewardship, which is an interesting concept, which rejoins, and I'm thinking about this a lot today, when the issue of the environment this year particularly is of importance. How do we steer the forces of the market in a way that grants the stewardship of our planet, for example, on issues of the environment? That is also, you know, liberalism. So we cannot just say that liberalism is about market economy. Of course it is. Of course we're for freedom of markets. We're for, like, you know, expanding freedom in terms of trade and whatnot. But we are also, as liberals, conscious that we have something precious in our hands, which is, you know, our planet that needs to go on, and we need to have some kind of stewardship. And how do you structure that stewardship without making it oppressive? Because what you don't want in a government, actually, it's just being oppressive to the point that you cannot really, like, have freedom in organizing your life in terms of, like, building enterprises and creating wealth. You know, I mean, liberals sometimes, I think, opposed to socialists, we think that we have to create wealth before we distribute it, right? I mean, we have to make to have something to distribute, right? So that's one of the issues I wanted to highlight. Thank you.
Good, thank you. Let's take another round of questions, and I'm going to ask the speakers to answer in very, very short, with very short answers after this.
As much as we all consider that the discussion today went a bit too far, but perhaps with a lot of political innuendos, let's get back to the discussion. Is Malaysia ready for a political party? I think, for a liberal political party, I think the discussion has been lacking very much on the aspect of Malaysia, the society as well. We do understand about the responsibilities of an authority, say that it becomes a liberal authority, but we also have to consider about the society that we're living in, because we also face, even in this discussion, we see that both of the panelists here, including Dr. Juli as well, are ascertaining the discussion in a very cautious manner. That shows itself that we're not really ready to have a liberal discussion. Exactly, because we are considering in a populist manner. If we say that we're inclusive liberal political party, if you say, but we still see populist policies are being done by the government, or even manifestos professed by the political parties that we have currently in Malaysia. So we say, how do we ensure that the society then be ready to have a liberal political party then, not just on the part of the authority? That's all I have to ask.
Good question. Good question. So how do we push society to be ready for a liberal party?
The forum is whether the liberal are ready to form their own party. Okay. And that aside, I have two questions. One for Dr. Juli and the rest for Pak Khalid and Dr. Zul. And Juli, you have a vast knowledge about the experience of liberals in many countries. I mean, some of them being part of the government and some of them lose in their elections. Can you share with us what are the constraints that faced by those liberals? I mean, to espouse their ideals when they are in the government, and I mean, or to be the government. And to Dr. Zul and Pak Khalid, my question is, regardless whether we will have a new liberal political party or not, and Pak Khalid says, I'm quite happy when Pak Khalid said that Keadilan is a liberal party. It makes me less guilty. And regardless of that, in what way we in Malaysia can or cannot be more liberals with the current political scenarios?
Okay, good. Thank you very much. Let's allow the panelists to answer. So the constraints faced by liberal political parties, and the other two questions for the others.
Yes, thank you very much. So we'll answer this one first. Liberals in many countries and the constraints. Now, Liberal International has become truly global in the past 2 decades, I would say. I'm in the Bureau of Liberal International since 2005, so at least for the last decade I've seen the evolution happen. My deputy, the number 2 at Liberal International, is Helen Zille. She's the Prime Minister of the Western Cape in South Africa, of the province of the Western Cape in South Africa. Now, and we were recently having an interesting debate. The challenges that she faces in South Africa, for example, are very different from some of the challenges that I'm learning about here today. One of those issues is, how to reconcile nationalism with liberalism. That's a good one, and that doesn't affect religion particularly. But nationalism, that some have qualified as the religion of the 19th century, basically, is you have that book, Imagine Communities, by Benedict Anderson, how nationalism rises and creates itself and whatnot. So those are things that are very present. That's a very important challenge. You have issues of, terrorism in some countries, or even guerrillas, talking with the liberals in Colombia. How do they face up to those issues? How do they trade security and safety and whatnot, and at the same time have a liberal society, right? I mean, it's tough. We face that in the West too, when confronted with terrorism. How do you stay true to your liberal principles of freedom of the press and freedom from encroachment by government when you're being surveilled to the bits? in all your transactions. That's a real challenge in many countries that espouse liberal ideas. Issues relating to human beings basically put in jail. There's been a lot of talk today here about gays and lesbians. Everybody seems to be referring to that issue. I suppose, I don't know, because in Malaysia this is an issue that's being used as a red herring by some political parties to try to make the other ones into bad ones, right? I mean, you always agitate using what basically motivates a religious society or not. But what is true is that there is in every society a minority of sexual minorities, people who are gay and lesbian, and how you treat them is an issue. It is an issue. And in more than 70 countries in the world, people that are gay and lesbian are put in jail or killed because of their gay and lesbian. I don't think that's part of a liberal society. But that doesn't mean to promote or not promote. It just acknowledge that there are people that are different from us. And you're just not going to put them in jail because they're different. Nobody wants... Why? You could put a person in jail because we used to put people in jail for other reasons. We used to enslave people for other reasons. We used to prohibit people from relating to each other because of race, So you have, in a society that's democratic, you have to live and let live, and you cannot just oppress. What Liberal International stands for is against oppression. We try to prevent oppression of human beings for one reason or another in any country. And I reject very clearly, and just to go back to your question, in which you said you're all very cautious, but I want to make sure that I reject any kind of oppression. And I want to make sure that basically, I go against these strange common allegations that seem to be present by the way you ask the questions here of like liberalism promotes one lifestyle or another, liberalism is anti-religion, liberalism is Western domination. For goodness sake, Liberal International is a global organization. We have members in different continents of different faiths. I myself am a Roman Catholic, you're a Muslim. We try to actually have an ideology that help us live together and not kill each other, and that help us actually find ways of expressing different ideas and engaging with each other, from our differences, Now, is Malaysia ready for a liberal political party? Well, I have been in this country for 2 days. But I think every country is ready for a liberal party. Absolutely. We have two, why wouldn't it be? And you have quoted your foundational documents in Malaysia. When this country was, founded away from colonialism, one of the founding principles was liberalism. So it is a bit ironic that, some powers that be in this country actually, try to use liberalism as a bad word. Now, I condemn that, and I reclaim liberalism as a good thing. There is a place for a liberal party, and liberal parties in this country, like there is in mine, like there is in South Africa, like there is in Africa, for example, which is interesting, right? I mean, we have had, I saw in Zurich the number of liberal parties that came to our Congress and our executive committee, how they are thriving right now. I was in Côte d'Ivoire, in the Ivory Coast recently, where you have a lot of, a big chunk of the population that is Muslim too, another chunk that is Christian or whatnot. And the party that governs, after 10 years of civil war, the party that governs Côte d'Ivoire, the Ivory Coast, is a liberal party, that of President Ouattara. It's not incompatible with religion, let me tell you. It's actually helping heal the difficulties of 10 years of civil war. So yes, I think there is a very clear place for one or more parties that are liberal in this country, even from different approaches to liberalism. And I also, if I might say, I don't like these additions to the word liberal, because it's like, okay, they criticize us for being liberal, so let's say that we are liberal in this way, but not in that other way. Well, we are liberal according to the Oxford Manifesto and according to certain principles that guide us, you know, and then, you know, whether you're, if you allow me to say, you were hyper-liberal or hyper-liberal or whatever. I mean, I've never heard this one. That's a good one, but, you know. I think that's...
How about inclusive?
Inclusive liberal, yes, that's another one. Yeah. Liberal is not a bad word. Liberal is actually, I think, the way to the future. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you. I'm going to give just 2 minutes each for you to comment if you have any responses to the question just now. How do you push society to make it ready for liberal party? In what way can we be more?
Yeah. I believe Malaysian is ready for Liberal Party. Yeah, we've been ready for more than last 50 years, I think. As I said, yeah, if the country is ready for Merdeka, yeah, which is founded upon liberal principle, constitutional government, free and fair election, yeah, constitution, yeah, parliament, yeah, those are liberals, yeah, but somehow or other it was eroded, yeah, from our history, yeah, and even the party that brought liberalism to this country has renounced or no longer believe in it. That's a problem. I think we have to retrieve that kind of thing. And currently there are liberal party. My party is a liberal party. The AP is a liberal party, slightly left of center. My party is centrist. Yeah, his party is far right of the center, I would say. Yeah, but I would still liberal because they believe in this principle. Forget whatever their leader says. Yeah, yeah. We are against liberalism. We are against secularism. In practice, in actual fact, they are working under liberal principle. Yeah. So I would not want to put drive a wedge between so-called liberal and, but I admit, yeah, what is said by Amin Ahmad, yeah. How to make the country more liberal? Yeah, it has been eroded, yes. Yeah, you look at the provisions of the how we have go against with the fundamental liberties and how it was eroded. Yeah, how many laws that are against the spirit of the Constitution, yeah, have been enacted, yeah, been passed by the parliament, yeah. So there have been decline of liberalism in the country. So our task is to resurrect those ideas, those principles, and expand it further, yeah. And Malaysian society definitely is continue to grow. We have, I mean, the issue of climate change, yeah, is very important, and I think I was very pleased with the papal encyclical, yeah, Laudato Si, yeah, if I can say that, yeah, which take climate change very, very seriously. And one of the sources of the Pope, the encyclical, is a Muslim poet and mystic by the name of Ali Al-Khawas, who also articulated the idea, apart from Saint Francis Assisi, which is very important for Christian theology with regard to theology of ecology, I say, yeah. But also he's discovered also Muslim also articulated that view, yeah. And how do we make the country more liberal? So we have to make people better understand liberalism. So we have to work harder in explaining, in educating the public. Since independence, there is no proper education about understanding of a liberal government. That's why it has been eroded from time to time, yeah. And especially within Muslim context, yeah, Malaysian context, because majority are Muslim, we have to seek deep, yeah, within our intellectual and spiritual resources, yeah, to look for principles of liberalism that later on been developed in the West. Yeah, I mean, my group study another Iberian thinker. Yeah, this is a mystic, great mystic, Muslim mystic, Ibn Arabi. Yeah, whose famous book was The Bezel of Wisdom, which contained a lot of ideas. Yeah, a lot of ideas about pluralism. And Muslim in this country has a big problem about pluralism. Yeah, and the only thinker, Muslim thinker, that really seriously deal with this is Ibn Arabi. Yeah, so I think we should familiarize ourselves with the ideas, difficult as it is. Yeah, but nonetheless, it's important. There are sources within Islamic intellectual heritage and tradition that one could do a kind of synthesis between what's the thinking of our great thinkers and philosophers, as well as what has been developed in the West since the age of enlightenment. Thank you.
Right, okay. Thank you very much for that. I think I'm not going to conclude or anything, but you know, all the speakers have made some very good points. There's a lot for us to digest and think about. So let's give them all a round of applause.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.